Join me today for another episode of Spinning My Wheels. Welcome back to the channel. Those of you who've been here before, welcome to those of you who are new. This is going to be another update on the WizKids, not WizKids, Wizards of the Coast open gaming license D&D 1 cluster situation. So there has been a couple of updates since the last video. First and foremost, Paizo, well, okay, let me give all credit where it's due if I can here. Cobalt Press came out and announced that they were going to be making their own system. And they've got a hashtag for it. I believe it's Raise the Flag. It's Project Black Flag, I believe is what they're calling it. So, they were the ones who seemed to make the first big move like that. There was another studio, unfortunately I don't have their name right off the top of my head. I had not ever heard of them beforehand, but they sent legal notice to Wizards of the Coast, essentially saying, hey, you need to clarify this, and if it's saying what we think it's saying, we'll see you in court. So, that was probably the first, like, actual shot fired. Probably. At least in public. So then Cobalt Press made their announcement, and a couple other studios, I believe, made similar announcements. And then Paizo jumped out with essentially proposing a new open gaming license of sorts, I think. It's not 100% clear what it is. I think it sounds an awful lot like what I was proposing in one of the last video, as far as the one I believe it's entitled Possible Solution, as far as getting a couple legal folks and trying to figure out exactly what can and can't be copywritten, and then gathering it all together and making a treatise, an authoritative document, trying to explain, like, hey, the stuff in here, this is all, like, free. Like, you can use any of this, no matter who you are, or for whatever you want. And it sounds like that's what they're doing. And their intention, Paizo has basically said they're going to bankroll it. They're still waiting to see what actually shakes out with the OGL situation, because they've also essentially said, yeah, if this is what you're saying it is, we'll see you in court, Hasbro. Because obviously all of the Pathfinder 1 material was published under the OGL. Their Pathfinder 2 material, from what they say, if I followed it correctly, it uses the OGL, but the purpose of it wasn't to use the material Wizards of the Coast had created. It was to allow anyone else to use what was in the Pathfinder 2 materials that wasn't specifically, Pathfinder trademarked, similar to how Wizards of the Coast does it. So if there's any kind of unique monsters or anything that they specifically call out as trademarked, you can't use those. But the bulk of the mechanics and basic classes, things like that, you can. And so by using the OGL, that allows, by having that in there, that allows someone else to come along and sub-license via Pathfinder. If I understand it correctly, and I'm not a lawyer, so don't take that as any kind of authoritative legal comment, but that's what I gathered from their statement. So they are now removing that OGL. However, there's still, obviously books have been printed or are being printed that will still have it. I don't know, maybe they'll put a sticker over it or something. I don't know. But I've got the impression it's like effective immediately. Any future copies that are printed will not feature it. And then once they get their new proposed OGL up and running, that will be in its place. They have the backing of a number of other companies, among them Cobalt Press, several others. If you go to the Paizo website, Paizo, in case you're sitting there like, well, how the hell do you spell Paizo? And if I can, in the comments, I'll make a pinned comment to link to their actual statement, and they have a list of who all was on board thus far. So yeah, and the idea is ultimately the person most directly responsible is the person who actually drafted the OGL for Wizards of the Coast, the lawyer, who now works at a law firm that specializes in IP law, again, if I recall correctly. Since I'm driving, I can't pull it up here on my phone. Should have possibly planned this a little bit better. That's on me. Sorry. So then the idea ultimately will be to find, and that will act as a temporary safe harbor. Paizo, even though they're footing the bill, will not own it, like Hasbro presently owns via Wizards of the Coast the OGL. So that way, at least in theory, it can't be altered. And the ultimate hope is to place it in the hands of a non-profit organization, similar to, or possibly even the same, that handles Linux, because Linux is freeware, it's openware. You can use it to your heart's content without paying a license to anyone. Well, someone kind of has to make sure that stays that way, I believe. And so the goal is to ultimately get it into someone like that's hands, because from what I've gathered from the last few days of listening to these various podcasts and videos, once it gets in the hands of a non-profit, it's either difficult or impossible to get it back out of the hands of a non-profit. Like if a non-profit goes under, if I understand correctly, its assets really can't be bought up by for-profit corporations. I could be wildly wrong on that, but that's the take I keep hearing. They have to be other non-profit organizations. So something like this is kind of like once you declare something is freeware, Creative Commons, what have you, there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. And this would be to make sure that we don't wind up in this situation again. So now I don't know if that means Cobalt Press will still be developing their own system by itself. And I assume they will. I assume they're just backing this, because as long as everything uses common parts, everything should be at least somewhat compatible, if not directly compatible. So, or they're just, doing it through sheer altruism to stick it to Wizards of the Coast. I mean, you never know. And likewise, at Paizo, they're going to be, they think their second edition is safe. They say they didn't develop it with any material from the SRD, so they didn't even need the OGL. So, we'll see. I don't play Pathfinder. That may change in the near future. We're going to be, Brad and I definitely want to look at some other systems, and I think Chad has some interest. It's going to be a matter of, since we already have trouble scheduling for our gaming group, trying to, on top of that, be like, oh, by the way, we're using a different system tonight. We're having a hard enough time getting together just for D&D. So we'll have to see how that goes as far as in practice. We might have to, gather knowledge a different ground here. But I've already gotten a hold of one of the main rule books for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, so I can start browsing through it and, see what it's like. Because I know, at least for me personally, I did look through Pathfinder 1st Edition, because at the time I was running a 3.5 game, and the material's basically compatible. So I was looking for some other ideas. But Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I haven't looked at it at all. So, then Okay, so Paizo's doing their thing. Goodman Games, they're the people who make Dungeon Crawl Classics and Mutant Crawl Classics, and who have also been updating some of the older modules to 5th edition. They initially released a press release saying that, they don't see how any of it affects them. Okay, so I don't know if at the time, they took it to their lawyers, and their lawyers were like, yeah, this, they can't do anything here. Or if they had another arrangement, because unless I'm mistaken, Goodman Games is who runs the D&D events at Gen Con. At least I believe they were. I'm pretty sure they were. And possibly at other conventions. So, however, like a day or two later, they came out like in total support of Paizo's move. And, they wrote, they gave the big list of everyone else on board, and if you know anything about them, they mentioned the wizard van quite a bit. They had a whole come on in, there's plenty of room kind of deal. So they seem to be full bore behind that. Now I don't know if that's if they're playing both sides. And hey, I hate to say it, but it's business. Like, if you can, I could see a scenario because of them doing the adaptations to 5th edition and running Wizards of the Coast games for them. If they can do that, but also on not a personal, on an artistic level, want to support the other endeavor, why not? Might as well go for it. And which that kind of brings me around to Critical Role. Now, as I understand it, I don't think they've put out a statement, or if they have, I missed it. But a number of people seem to be upset at this fact. And on the one hand, I get it, because you're thinking, okay, well, these guys are all artists. Surely they understand, and they're for the plight of the little man here and everything, But on the other hand, I have to imagine that they have a separate contract with Wizards of the Coast, and that it has to have clauses that make it so they can't say negative or disparaging things about them or the game. I have to assume that that's a thing, because I know if I'm Wizards of the Coast and I decide to sponsor these people who have a huge audience, I'm going to want to have some kind of recourse if all of a sudden they turn on me, So that's just the way I would view it anyway. So that's what I'm assuming is going on, or they're in negotiations, potentially, and they want to see which way the wind blows. Because again, I find it hard, even though I personally am going to have some issues going forward sticking with Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, more Hasbro than Wizards of the Coast. If they're the ones paying your bills, I have a hard time, on a let's keep it real kind of level here. I have a hard time faulting someone for not messing with their income stream. It's one thing for me here as a guy on YouTube recording on a cell phone who works a regular job, to sit there and be like, yeah, for the cause, throw away your thing, your gravy train that's making you millions of dollars probably. Yeah, join us. Like, that's easy for me to say, but it'd be quite a bit more difficult were I in their position to be like, well, I mean, you know, there's integrity has a price, you know. I'm just saying, I don't know where that is, and the kind of money that Critical Role probably rakes in. I can't fault them for at least feeling the situation out before jumping headfirst into the waters here. So we'll just have to see what develops. Plus, they record their episodes ahead of time, so you know. Now, if they have said something, then, you know, I apologize if they have said something and it's something good. But my point is, don't let a response, a bad response, a lack of response, don't let anything to do with Critical Role short circuit what's going on with everyone, basically everyone being united in the whole Wizards of the Coast, you done messed up. Like, we know you did. And which brings us around to Wizards of the Coast's response, which is basically filled with lies and deceptions. You know, with trying to essentially tries to play the whole thing off as, well, you know, these were just draft copies of the agreements. Well, I mean, from the sounds of things, people got sent these agreements to sign, and I'm definitely no expert in high-level corporate negotiations, but aside from maybe signing like a you know, like a tentative, I like where this is going, I want to see more, I'll keep quiet about it, and I'm going to signal my intent to, if things go smoothly from here, yes, we're going to sign. Aside from something like that, I don't even know what the hell you'd call that, other than an NDA for the part where you won't talk about it. You don't send people draft copies. You send them the finalized agreement, because that's what they need to sign. You know, once you've gotten together and sorted out the language, or, you know, if you're the much larger company, once you've said, here's your choices, take it or leave it, whichever tact you're going for with negotiation, like, you don't send them a half-finished contract. You don't send them a contract to say you have a week to sign this, and then go online and say, oh, yeah, we always wanted everyone's feedback. Well, no, you didn't. Like, you sent contracts out with an NDA. Like, that's the polar opposite of wanting feedback, you know, from the community. Obviously, from the people who sent the contracts to you, you're going to get some feedback, and I'm assuming a lot of it was negative. But that's just an assumption on my part, because I know had I got one of those contracts, I probably would have sent a video of me lighting it on fire. But that's just me. So, yeah, so their response is just so bad. With my personal favorite line, and I'm sure I'm going to slightly misquote this, but essentially, in the days ahead, you're going to hear that that another group won and we lost, but the reality is they won and we won. I'm just like, what the hell are you talking about? You very clearly lost, are still losing, and refuse to acknowledge this fact. Like, there's numerous leaks that are, you know, spelling out once and for all that Hasbro just views everyone as a piggy bank. Which, I mean, sure, that's how businesses operate, but when you're talking something that up till very recently really felt like a niche hobby, where you really kind of know everyone in charge and that runs things. I mean, you don't know them on a personal level, but you see them, you can identify them, you know, you see videos with them, and like the CEO of Ford doesn't do that, okay? The CEO of Ford doesn't get on Twitch and talk about the newest electric vehicle, and then next week come back and, you know, show videos of them driving around, the next week come back and test painting it. You know, I mean, that just doesn't happen with major corporations, okay? With major markets. That happens with small companies that are trying to build trust and trying to act like your friend. And some of them probably genuinely mean to be, but, at the end of the day, company equals money. That's the way it works. And I don't fault them for it, so long as they don't choose just utterly reprehensible methods of trying to acquire that money. That's where the problems come in. But anyway, so we get used to seeing these various people on the design teams, and they're on their set with all the D&D stuff everywhere, and not too much to remind you of, oh, you can't possibly afford all this, just enough to, like, man, I wish I could afford that one thing, or if you are that person, like, man, I can't, I've got that thing, or whatever, I can only imagine the amount of time they spend making sure the set looks just right, that perfect balance of stuff you can easily acquire, stuff that's like definitely out of the reach of 90% of the fans, but not so much that they're getting disheartened, and the lighting and everything else. I mean, it's all a facade, okay? It's all meant to lure you in and trust the person, even though you have no earthly reason to trust them. So, some of the insider stuff finally showed definitively that, at least to the people running Hasbro, and possibly the CEO of WizKid, or Wizards of the Coast, they literally just view the current fans, people that, I don't know if it's all the current fans. I'm assuming it's more the people that came with the game, and not the people that have shown up since, like, Stranger Things and Critical Role, the newer fans. They haven't quite had time to learn and adapt and take on the, really internalize their enjoyment and interest of the game, to the point that if you start screwing with it, you're going to have beef. They'll just walk away. Some of them have, adapted. I'm not trying to put down new fans at all here. New fans typically are good. You want your hobby to an extent, you want it to grow, to make sure it's still there. So, one of the leaks literally says that they view the fans as an impediment to their money, as in they think that they are owed this money, that we just owe them money just for the privilege of them existing, I guess, and I don't understand it. Like, you just have to be bafflingly stupid to think that people are going to go along with that. And I don't know, So to me, if you're Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast, you sit down, you look at your problem. Okay, you think it's under monetized. Okay, it probably is. Then you identify that 20% of your audience makes about 80% of your purchases. Okay, so now then add to that, you're dealing with an audience that, if you understood it, you'd realize, number one, is notoriously cheap. There's a handful of people that are the whales. The people that buy the $400 tie-a-mat miniature, the people that buy the fake dragon head, those people are out there. They're not anywhere near a majority, even a large percentage. Okay, they just aren't. Okay, you just don't have tons of whales like that. You have some, not tons. And even there, it's probably still just the dungeon masters doing the purchasing, if I had to guess. So then the game itself teaches you to think outside the box, to be creative, to attempt to overcome long odds. Okay? So if you're dealing with people like that who've been playing this game for decades, number one, you're probably not going to outsmart them. Like, you're just probably not. because they've been doing what you're going to try to do for far longer. Like they've seen it coming. You know, they know how to spot trouble that's coming at them. It's a skill they've developed playing the game, which if you understood the game, you would know that. So you put all this together, and their solution appears to be trap everyone in the virtual tabletop, kick everyone else out, and then microtransact them to hell and back. Instead of, I don't know, maybe make some t-shirts, some dice, books, you know, like the players will buy that stuff. The players need dice. You know, the players wear shirts. The players read novels. You know, like comic books. I mean, the movie's a good first step. You know, well, hopefully. We'll see how it turns out. And then, of course, you know, the action figures based on the movie. Okay, we're on the right track. And as Hasbro, you make the action figures. The action figures feel cartoon, you know, hit them in the nostalgia feels, you know, great. Honestly, considering buying the Avenger figure myself, all this kind of left a sour taste in my mouth with Hasbro. So, you know, you do those things, but, you know, I don't claim to know everything in Hasbro's product catalog, but I don't think they've made very many dice sets. I think they tend to be like like they had one for the Icewind Dale set, they had one for the Descent to Avernus, and a couple of the others. Okay, so they have them for some of the adventures. All right, so that's great, and they do have some stuff in the dice sets that looks kind of cool. I was going to buy a couple of them, but I heard the dice themselves were terrible, so I didn't buy them. And that's a long-standing problem with Wizards of the Coast. So you see this. Okay, so if I'm a player or DM, and I'm the type that has to have lots and lots of new shiny math rocks, you know, I look at you and I'm like, man, you've got like 5 sets, and I have them all. Old Chessex over here has like a bajillion different sets of dice. Like, I don't think it'd kill you to be somewhere in between where you are now and Chessex. You don't have to get to Chessex, just somewhere closer to it. I mean, I see all these Kickstarters for dice all the damn time, and I buy into way too many of them. Like, you're missing the gravy train here, Wizards of the Coast. Like, that's a thing where you're definitely leaving money on the table. Go for that. That doesn't feel like you're trying to screw everybody. Okay? Again, the t-shirts. Being able to actually use the proprietary creatures that you own instead of a rough drawing that kind of looks like them on T-Fury or something. You know, that has value. You know, put your inside jokes on there. You know, a few people will get them. You know, sell them. And again, like I said in the other video, for the love of God, bring back the novel line. Like, that's how you build brand loyalty. That's how you get people invested in the setting. Because the setting is the pathway to other items, to merchandise. Okay? Like I mentioned, look at Star Wars. Does Star Wars sell itself as generic sci-fi fantasy thing? No, it's very specific. It's Darth Vader, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi, it's the Emperor, it's Luke, it's the Stormtroopers, it's the Empire, the Rebellion. You know, it's all these iconic things. Okay, because there's a story that people care about. Alright? Do that. You were doing that. There's like 300 Forgotten Realms novels. And now there's like one released a year, and I think Salvatore's doing that through some other printing company. Just because he can. Like, what is going on? You know, start cranking out more novels. Catalyst Games released like 20 books last year. And Battletech is nowhere near the size of Dungeons & Dragons, and they managed to pull that off. Like, just do what they're doing. Release them as PDFs, and then release them through Amazon as print on demand. I mean, your cost here is going to be your editor, not, you know, and a little bit on layout. you know, and they just recycle artwork. You know, you just recycle artwork from your books, or, you know, you're talking one picture on the front of the novel. Like, it's ridiculous. But you do that, and that's how you generate characters. People can be like, man, I want an Elminster figure. Because right now, what you have is, what would you even make an action figure of right now? Generic human fighter? You know, generic fire genasi sorceress? I mean, you're just going to be making generic stuff. No one wants action figures of those. Like, a few of them might look, in fairness, a few of them might look cool, might sell. But for the most part, no one wants generic human fighter. You know, they want, I don't know. I don't even know of any human fighters in the books off the top of my head. They want Warduke, okay? You know, they want, from the realms, they want Elminster. They want Drizzt. I think Drizzt has a figure. But he's like the only one. You know, they want the Xanathar. Not just a beholder, specifically the Xanathar. You know, they want characters. They don't just want generic crap. They want characters that they have a backstory, that they have an attachment to, that you can then put on shirts and put on books and, you know, make animated series about, and so on and so on. And that's, you know, that's how you harvest your IP, is you use the IP. The game is not where you're going to make your money. You know, this is like with Marvel and Marvel Comics right now. Marvel Comics only exists anymore to generate ideas for the movies. It's just a test bed for the movies. It's not making money. I'm pretty sure DC isn't making money either for this, and it's the same concept. You know, but the IP there, it has tremendous value. You know, the stories, the characters. And again, it's the characters. They're not generic superhero crap. It's Spider-Man, it's the X-Men, it's Iron Man, you know. And that's, you know, people care about that. They don't care about random Hydra agent. Well, this is Bob the Hydra agent. There's a whole story there. You either know it or you don't. I'm not going into it. You know, or like George Tarleton before he became MODOK. You know, things like that. Well, probably not before he became MODOK. He's probably a nobody. But I don't know. I wasn't reading comics in the 70s because I wasn't born yet. So that's what you have to do. And if you do that, the other people around the table will buy those things, you know? And hopefully you'll start drawing in other people, you know, because there was a point in time that the novels outsold the RPG. So you'll have novel readers that are like, oh yeah, I'll buy that figure. Like, I like that guy, you know? And I don't know. This seems like the most basic thing in the world to me. It seems to me like it'd be a license to print money. You just have to follow the right steps. And it just seems like they're just wanting to cut straight ahead. And I halfway wonder if this is because they just completely screwed the pooch with Magic the Gathering. Because it sounds like they really managed to piss off everyone over there. And that was also a license to print money. So, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but maybe if I were Hasbro, I'd be getting to look at who made all these decisions, because it's probably the same people, and I'd be giving them the axe and bringing in someone that has business sense, that understands how to extract value out of intellectual property without seeming like a scumbag. So, I don't know, maybe it's just me. But that's probably enough of the rambling and ranting here. If you stayed this long, thanks. All the news was really towards the beginning. But anyway, if you liked what you heard, you know, hit the like, subscribe, share it around. Definitely check out other channels to get a more precise handling of events. But that's our take for those of you out there who are listening. Well, my take. Brad has a video of his take. Just gotta get it from him and get it uploaded. which if I do, it might actually end up being on here before this one. Just have to see how it goes. But anyway, thank you folks for watching, and have a good one.